Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the next episode of my, by now hopefully famous, Safe Bet show. And I'm absolutely delighted to have Tammi Barlow, Director of Social Responsibility at the Rush Street Interactive, as my guest today. Tammi, thank you very much for coming on the show.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I feel like honored, like I made it into like the Hall of Fame now. So thank you for having me.
Now, as I've said, we're truly honored to have you, and if this helps your ticket to inevitably join in the Gambling Hall of Fame, then I would be only too happy about that. For the unlucky few amongst you who may not have come across Tammi or who may not know her, as I've just said, her current role is with Rush Street Interactive. Prior to that, she'd spent a decade in the industry with the likes of William Hill, Caesars, at one point pretty much the same business, IGT, and also the North Star Lottery. But before we start talking about the gambling industry, Tammi, if I may, you also happen to have spent 13 years, so over a decade, of your career or your previous life, if you will, in the health and human services sector. And only then you drifted to the dark side and decided to join the gambling industry. But then on a serious note, what lessons during those 13 years and the subsequent decade did you draw from your time with the health and human services that you could use, that you could juxtapose on your subsequent career in gambling?
Yeah, so I did work for an organization in Chicago, which I credit a lot of just my work ethic, everything to. But basically, we provided services, everything from substance abuse, HIV/AIDS, and problem gambling was also one of the services. And at the time, my job was just to, help promote the programs. And so I had known, the importance of it, and I had actually seen people, but I didn't have any way of putting, I didn't know what it would mean later to be able to understand that. So I did a lot of great things, both locally and internationally, when it came to providing, services to communities in need. And then, I had always had a want to do something on the corporate side. I always wanted to do something good and continue to help people, but not sort of be a part of the volatility of nonprofit when it comes to budgets get cut all the time, which could lead to, you losing your job, things like that. So I found out about this opportunity for corporate social responsibility and responsible gaming. And it was through GTech at the time. This is before GTech acquired IGT. And they became the first private manager of a lottery, which was the Illinois Lottery. And the Illinois Lottery has an amazing commitment to, player protection, to corporate social responsibility. And so, though we were the private manager, we got a chance to work a lot with side by side the lottery. And really be able to do a lot of grassroots things. In addition, I was able to, I started working on our World Lottery Association accreditation for the lottery. That was one of the things that they wanted to do, is to be known as a responsible, operator of lottery services. And so I really just found then that, I had a love of research. I had a love of understanding things. And so I was able to really dig into the whole WLA process and met some wonderful people. And I think, it was just, project management, a passion for wanting to help people, always wanting to do something impactful, helped me better fit and segue into the gaming industry. And I think it was the people I met along the way also that just kind of helped me know that this was a great place for me to have pivoted to, and I've been there ever since.
And the gambling industry is doubtless better for your having joined. So thanks for joining the ranks. I wouldn't want to go off tangent too much, but I usually kick off these podcasts by trying first of all to relate to my guest, and I've got to say that having recently toured the country with none less than Charles Oakley, whereby we fed the hungry and catered to their other needs, it was indeed both tough, but at the same time very gratifying. And most importantly,
Hmm.
it was very, very real. The other
Yeah.
question, and just a brief answer if you don't mind, because I'm still a newcomer to the great country United States is, I'm still trying to get my head around the US health system. You've been with the health services, so what on earth
Hmm.
is going on there? And because for a European who's largely used to having the likes of the UK NHS, or where I'm originally from, I'm not saying that the healthcare would be for free, but the bills are not sky high. So your
Yeah.
instant take on where the US would need to take its private medical cover, if you don't mind.
Well, I do agree that and I feel like I'm not really big into politics, but I will say that over the last few administrations, Obamacare, work the Clintons, things like that, I feel like there was more of a push for, you know, um, more affordable health care. I think that's what is really needed here. And I think when it comes to, substance abuse, problem gambling, mental illness. I think those types of things. I would like to see services be free, but then, the budgets have to be there, that the states have to allocate, and it just becomes something that is much bigger than me. But yes, I would say that there is a definite disparity, and but we can only just keep hoping that affordable health care for all becomes more and more of an everyday thing.
Indeed, fingers crossed, and although it may appear I've just gone massively off tangent, I asked the question for a reason, because the message I believe that we would agree on conveying is that responsible gambling, and now we're moving to the meat of the debate, if I may go there, it's not sitting in a silo. It's arguably a part of the wider mental health related debate. But perhaps the place to start would be to ask you, what is sort of your take on the current state of the USRG union? Now,
Mm.
what have we done well as an industry, but what still requires improving? And you've seen it from arguably both sides, having worked with William Hill, so there's the European experience, but at the same time it's been transposed to the US context. So where do
Hmm.
you think we are, and where do you think where we're headed and where we need to be headed in your view?
Yeah, and I think one of the best things that I can say is that when I first started working in the industry, it was just the lottery industry was getting into the space of becoming more responsible with the World Lottery Association, things like that, and it used to be thought like, oh, how will the casino industry react, and how will these industries? But what I can say is, I mean, all of the responsible gaming practitioners that I've met, whether it's through a competitor, operator, or whatever, I mean, I think that the industry is moving in a really, really great way. I think that people are very, very cognizant of consumer protection. I think that there is almost an unspoken acknowledgement that it's all of our responsibility to protect consumers, especially with all of the type of gaming that is available now. So I have seen, lots of great organizations, come, there's obviously the National Council, there's the American Gaming Association, there's Kindbridge. I mean, there are some really, really, really dedicated people. And I think this is the one space where everyone just wants to continue to do better. I think that where we're at right now, though, is at a crossroads with we need to change some of those laws that were, or regulations, mandates that were maybe put together in the 90s and the early 2000s and things like that. Because there's certain things that are just, that just need to be refreshed, especially when you think about, the online space. And so things like self-exclusion, there needs to be I know a lot of different states are looking to work together. There's a lot of conversation about more access for it to follow people. I think that there's just a lot of room, for the different player protections, to be looked at. I just think that there's a lot of with the new types of ways that people can have fun on different platforms. I just think that there's a lot more work that needs to be done, and I think the other thing that I'm really hoping is something that comes to the fold is, I either one or two unified numbers where people can get help. I think right now in the U.S., we've learned a lot of lessons from the U.K. We've learned a lot of lessons, and then there's jurisdictions like Canada that teaches us, totally different things, and so there's some really good best practices. But I think in the U.S., like there needs to be like a modification somehow of, you know, the some of the mandates, so that they really benefit who they were created for, the people. And it's not that people are not to making the change. I think it's just hard to make the changes because of all that you have to go through to do so in each jurisdiction.
I can't agree more. Indeed, the objective of this podcast is not to be controversial. Perhaps with other guests, I would go that way, but I would absolutely endorse what you have just said. Indeed, having a unified, nationwide helpline number would be extremely beneficial both for the industry, but I would suggest even more importantly for the consumers. And also from what I'm hearing, there's still a lot of work to be done in terms of explaining what these helplines are designed for, because some folks out there, they might still believe that when they see that number already, all those 15 coming on to 20 numbers on the screen, that's the number to dial if they happen to have locked themselves out of their account, or they need the latest best bonus that may be on offer. And I suppose all this sits in the context to pick up on your point about the new channels that this industry has started using for its offering. I believe that it all points towards the use of technology for responsible gambling purposes. So what would be your take on that? Technology and human touch at the same time, or how would you structure that? Because ultimately we're still talking about human beings at both sides of the screen, the customer and the likes of you, who are doing their very best to help those customers not to go down the slippery slope of gambling addiction.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely believe they both go hand in hand. I do think that you do need research, and things to help you understand player behavior. I think there are algorithms, I think there are markers of harm that are universal that you just should know. But then there's also that personal touch of, when you're customer service agents, or if you're in a casino and the people that are on the floor, those customers. And even if you don't, you can tell. So there's always going to have to be that human side of it. I would not ever, think that just a fully automated, okay, this person has this and that now they're labeled. I think there always has to be a human element. And I think that of all of my counterparts at the different, companies, they're people that are heading these programs are passionate, so that they want to see the chats, they want to see the player history, they want to understand, and I think too, us working with our councils, our local councils, and getting an understanding of, what services are they providing. I think it's just, we're all working together. And so there's the research, the truth, not the truth, but I guess, the numbers and things like that. But you've always got to have that human element in order to have, I think a great program.
Absolutely, yeah. It needs to be data-driven, but as we've both suggested, it's about human beings, and these programs need to be designed accordingly and having had the honor and pleasure of working with, I suppose, most, if not all, our opposite numbers from within the responsible gambling world, I can definitely endorse what you've said about them. There's a lot of passion, and hopefully we are all getting together to rally the industry around this cause. We've talked about causes, we've also talked about silos, and your role at Rush Street also focuses on corporate social responsibility. To my mind, it's an absolutely natural marriage between responsible gambling and the wider CSR causes. And I suppose cynics would argue that these days rolling out CSR or ESG programs is a no-brainer, but I reckon that we will both agree there's much more to it. So looking at it from the practical perspective, if I may, I suppose, what is it like to try to implement CSR and responsible gambling policies? In your experience, what it has been like, what is it like these days to implement it across the whole business, where, of course, individual departments in an ideal world, and usually they do pull together, but there may be still a bit of tension from experience between responsible gambling and the pure revenue generation.
Again, I think I've been lucky in my career because whether it was GTech, IGT, William Hill, Caesars, now Rush Street, I've never worked for anyone that didn't appreciate the nuance of them both. I've never really had to argue for resources or a need. So I think that it's been pretty easy for me to say, okay, if you're going to look at a holistic program of, player protection, community service, diversity and inclusion, I mean, they all go hand in hand. I think that, some of the things where there might be maybe some friction could be in the marketing and promotions, because you don't want to, there's a fine line between overpromising or suggestive language, or, is that image, teetering on the edge of being like a childlike character. So I think there is a little bit of back and forth between, creativity versus, social responsibility. But again, you're able to get through that and understand, I mean, I think there's been so much good effort put through such great organizations that you don't really have to sell people on why they should or shouldn't be doing something. I think it is proven that diverse teams are better, as far as creativity and the bottom line. I think that being able to do, ESG things, that they make sure that you have structure, about what you're doing, and accountability. I think that, the whole thing with corporate social responsibility is that you have a responsibility to your consumers, your community, and really to who are you as a company, your values. So like I said, I have been very lucky. Maybe the only areas I could see are maybe like the advertising and promotions area. But I can just go get the AGA thing and slap it down. This is why. This is why we cannot do that, or, this is where you also turn to some of like the UK things or wherever. So I don't know. I think everybody, I don't want to seem like the glass is always half full, but I just think with CSR, it kind of is.
And it's absolutely fantastic to have as a positive person as you are on our show, because it pumps even more energy into it. So thanks again for coming on, and we will ultimately get on to talking about diversity, because that, needless to say, is an extremely important topic. But if I for a split second may stick to the debate around advertising, because on the one hand, there is an absolute business need to attract customers to the regulated channels by which we within the industry provide our services. Indeed, on the On the other hand, we do need to go, again, as an industry, individual operators, but also collectively, we need to go about it in a responsible fashion. So, in your view, besides slapping that AGA document and perhaps the UK and other practical experience into the faces of the marketing team, and I hereby apologize to any marketeer that may be perhaps by happenstance listening to this podcast, do you think that those passionate responsible gambling advocates, so our group, our little family, if I may call it that way, do you think there's anything else we could do to try to blend the two interests that I agree they're not mutually exclusive? Good responsible advertising should attract customers, but is there anything we would need to do? Shall we be, for example, thinking inspired by the UK perhaps? Should we be thinking about industry-wide responsible gambling messages, not just to have a 2-second screen at the end of every advert?
I think you're definitely going to start to see that. And I specifically, what I really appreciate about in Ontario, what they're doing is they want to actually see like dedicated responsible gaming like advertising. I think it's about balance. I think it's, we understand that when you go into a new market, you're going to have to do a lot of, push, but I feel that what the practitioners are saying is it's not that you can't do it, but we want to see more than commercials about setting limits, or that it's cool to, take a break. We need to start also publicizing and making, safety measures just as prominent, right? So, whether that's, you say every quarter, if we have this many advertisements on this or promotions on this, maybe you have this many, ads on that. Maybe there are places where if there's a bunch of operators all in one area that are all, supposed to do their own advertising, maybe they can all come together. I think that these are, again, the one thing I want to emphasize is like, unlike maybe other areas in gaming, this is the one spot that we don't really compete. And so I think if there is a way that we could all do a unified message, have a unified number, and speak one language, that the industry feels this way. I love what like the AGA has done, like with their have a game plan, and they've gotten like the different sports teams and operators to sign on. Like it's things like that I think you're just going to start to see more and more, because you have to have balance. Regulate yourself before you get regulated. Regulate yourself before you get regulated. So I think if we can naturally find a way to balance that out, I think we'll be much better off in it as an industry.
Let's hope this is the music of not too distant future. Indeed, what the organizations out there have already started doing needs to be appreciated. And as you've pointed out, indeed, this is not an area where we're meant to be competing. It's not about who happens to have the nicest responsible gambling policy wrapped up and what have you. It's about the efficiency, and indeed efficiency, in my view, across the board. And going back to the theme about the marketeers, of course, ultimately it is the role of this folk to be, for want of better expression, at each other's throat, trying to attract as many customers as possible to a given brand. I'm very glad that you've also mentioned Ontario and what's lately been happening in Canada. I've been myself heavily involved in that process. So perhaps, and hopefully that is not a controversial question either, because I suppose there's always been sort of a fraternal rivalry between the United States and Canada. But do you think that the individual US states would be prepared to draw inspiration not only from, let's say, Nevada and New Jersey, the leading US gambling states, but also Ontario and ultimately Canada, despite it being, well, a different country, similar but not identical mentality?
I think that there's, I don't know, again, it's For me, I have to base it on the people that I know are the RG professionals right now that are out there. And I think that they would absolutely welcome, any types of I don't yeah I think it I don't think there's a Canada US riff or anything. In fact, I think the Responsible Gaming Council, I mean, they're top notch. You have to give respect where respect is given regardless of political. Again, we're in a space of helping people gain access to services and treatment that they need. If there's a better way for someone to do it and it's proven that it's better, then why not? I just have not heard anything but good things from people wanting to do. I mean, I can call out like FanDuel did some great things now. They have a commercial that they've released. I mean, I have a lot of respect for my colleagues in this space. So I'm going to say it's going to be a thumbs up if there are things that can be shared that people would be happy to implement here in the US.
Absolutely, and I'm very glad to hear that there's a potential room for
I think
cross-fertilization
so.
between Canada and the United States, and hopefully it will help in other areas as well. I suppose the final topic, and that may be a controversial one, although it shouldn't really be, that I would like to touch upon before I give Tammi a chance to convey her key messages. So my usual tricky question at the end, you've got 60 seconds, show us what you've got. But before we go there, I would suggest, and I suppose I may be in an awkward position being a man myself, that historically, and even till the present day, the gambling industry has a reputation and is largely remains male dominated. At the same time, and for example with arrival of Entain's own CEO, Jetta Nygård Andersen, I believe that at least lately the wind of change has started blowing. So now you've been in the industry for a decade, and I suppose you may have a different, logically you might have a different perspective than I would have had. Do you think that that wind of change is blowing strongly enough, or where do you think all this is going? Are we moving away from being perceived as a male-dominated industry?
I think there's some window dressing that is definitely. I think that the intent is there. I think it is really up to the heads of companies to really make that commitment from top down to having more women on their board, having more people of color, in the C-suite, having more programs that can focus on people's their uniqueness rather than the reasons that they're different. I think it's fairly new yet, right? So I want to see where things are in like 3 or 4 years from now. I think one thing that I do appreciate is the jurisdictions in the US who have made diversity and inclusion a part of their requirements. I think it's things like that that will move the needle, because then you can't just what is the phrase? Put lipstick on a pig. Like, you have to have KPIs. You have to show year over year growth. I think those are the ways that I think we just need to see how things are going to keep going. I think that different different countries also have different challenges, right? So, maybe in the UK, it's about, pay equity, or gender bias, whereas maybe in the US, it's more, diversity of getting minority populations, more entangled with the gaming industry. So I think that it is the responsibility of every company to ensure that there is representation and a feeling of belonging for all of their customers, and that comes through how they treat their employees. If you treat your employees with dignity and respect, and you make sure that they value people's differences, and you train them on these things, and you understand that they understand that this isn't just a check the box. I think that then trickles down to your customer base. So I think that the efforts are on their way. You know, there's been some amazing appointments, you know, over the past couple of years. And um, I think as a Black woman, though, I want to ensure that this isn't just for right now, or we're just not responding because it's the thing to do. So I want to see in 5 years, what do those boardrooms really look like? What have those imperatives really shown? You know, what are we measuring, right? If we're just, it's not just about an observance, right? It's about other things. And so that's I just want to wait and see what happens, but I'm very encouraged by the people I've spoken to. But I am a Black woman, and I am always going to be cautious of what's real and what's not. And so I just will keep an eye on it and do what I can to do my part, you know, in my role. And we'll see.
And that's absolutely spot on. That's the word. It needs to be real. And in my view, there's absolutely no doubt that diversity will be critical to many things, including the future of and sustainable future of our industry. So now, Tammi, is your time to shine even more, and most definitely punch your ticket to the Gambling Hall of Fame.
Oh my God.
I will give you, before wrapping up, I'm gonna give you 60 seconds to convey your key messages, whatever they may be, about any topic, and we've discussed a few, to the audience of the Safe Bet Show. So floor is now totally yours.
All right, so this is my Grammys nomination, or my Grammy speech. I just want to say I respect and thank you to all of the people in the industry that are committed to responsible gaming and corporate social responsibility. We're just going to keep trudging along. For those people that are coming, you know, after me, you know, always demand more, ask for more, and make sure that your voices are heard. This is a fantastic industry. It's built on fun and entertainment, but we just have to continue to balance things so that we are not alienating people. We are not forgetting that we have guidelines that we must adhere to. And so let's just do this in the right way. And I think we've got amazing people that have come before me, people that will come after me, and I just hope that we just continue to lay the groundwork. Thank you for raising awareness the way that you do, and I'm just hoping for good things and that we all just keep up the good fight.
Ladies and gentlemen,
Was that 60 seconds?
Certain that with a speech like this, the Grammy will be awarded to the one and only Tammi Barlow. Thank you very much again for coming onto the show. It's been a true, and let me use that word again, a real pleasure.
I wanted to be more controversial, but I wanted to be more controversial, but I guess I'm just not.
We would love to have you back, so perhaps next time I'll do my best to design the questions so that they are much more controversial. Thank you very much again, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Martin Lycka, and this has been the latest episode of my Safe Bet Show. See you next time.